You're standing in a dealership parking lot at 6:40 p.m., engine off, keys still in your hand, because you haven't decided if you're going in. Sticker price on the windshield says $34,900. Your checking account says $2,114. Your palms are doing the thing they do. A salesman is already walking toward you, adjusting his tie, practicing a smile he's used 400 times this year. You know what he's going to ask before he asks it: cash or finance? You're going to say finance. You always say finance. Level 1. $34,900. You sign 42 months of your life away in 19 minutes. The finance guy doesn't even look up when he tells you the rate. 11.9%. He says it the way a waiter recites the specials, already reaching for the next form before you've even processed the number. You do the math in your head anyway, because some part of you needs to know how bad it is. 42 payments of $687. Total paid, $28,854 in interest and principal combined, against a loan that started at $34,900. On a car now worth $29,600 the second you drive it past the sign out front. The rule. At this level, the car owns a piece of your paycheck before your paycheck owns anything else. You drive it home proud, windows down for no reason, radio louder than it needs to be. You post a picture in the driveway, the porch light catching the paint just right. 41 likes by morning. Nobody in the comments asks what the interest rate is. Nobody ever does. For the next 3.5 years, the second week of every month, $687 leaves your account before rent, before groceries, before anything you'd call a choice. You get used to it the way you get used to a low hum in an old refrigerator. You stop hearing it. But it never actually stops. 3 years in, you trade it in for less than what's still owed on it, and you roll the difference into the next loan without really deciding to. You don't even notice you've done this until the finance guy mentions it, almost as an aside, like it's completely normal. It is completely normal. That's the part that should scare you. The pivot is a phone call. Your cousin, the one who never talks about money, tells you he just sold his company. Not sold it big, sold it enough. Enough that he says a number out loud like it's a normal thing to say out loud. The way other people mention the weather. You go quiet on the phone for 4 seconds. He notices. He always notices. He asks if you're still there, and you say, yeah, just processing. And he laughs like he understands. But he doesn't. Not really. Not yet. Because 6 months ago, he didn't either. Level 2. $180,000. This is the level where you can finally write a check for a car and not flinch. Not a fancy check. A used 4-year-old sedan, $19,000, paid in full. And the feeling afterward is almost disappointing. You expected relief, and instead you just feel normal. The way you feel after finishing a task you've been dreading, which is to say, barely anything at all. The rule. Money doesn't feel like anything until you're used to not having it. And then, it just feels like the absence of a specific kind of fear. You still check the price of gas out of habit, even though it no longer changes anything you do. You still wince at the oil change bill, an old reflex your body hasn't caught up on yet. The dealership treats you exactly the same as before. Same handshake, same laminated pamphlet about extended warranties, because to them, $180,000 sitting quietly in a savings account looks identical to $2,000 sitting quietly in a savings account. They can't see it. Nobody can see it. That's the first time you understand that money is invisible until you spend it. And even then, most people are too polite or too distracted by their own numbers to notice yours. You don't buy anything nicer. You buy the same category of car you've always bought. Same beige interior, same 4-cylinder engine. The number in the account went up by $178,000. The version of you making the decision didn't move an inch. You start saving in a way that feels almost compulsive. Checking the balance before bed the way other people check their phones. You tell yourself it's discipline. Some nights it feels more like fear wearing a nicer outfit. The pivot is a letter. Not a call this time. An actual envelope, cream-colored, from an accountant you hired because your cousin insisted you needed one now. That this wasn't a figure-it-out-yourself kind of number anymore. Inside is a projection, printed in a font too formal for what it's about to do to you. If nothing changes, if you keep saving and investing at the current pace, in 6 years, you cross a line most people never cross in their entire lives. You read it twice standing at the mailbox, mail truck still idling at the curb behind you, and you don't move until it turns the corner. Level 3, $1,200,000. You buy the car you always said you'd buy someday, back when someday was just a placeholder for never. A performance coupe, $61,000 out the door, paid in cash. No negotiation, because you didn't feel like negotiating, and for the first time in your life, you didn't have to. The rule. At 7 figures, the car stops being a decision and starts being a mood. Your old friends notice this one. Not the money. You never talk about the money. You've learned by now not to. The car. One of them asks how you afford it, half joking, testing the water, and you give the answer everyone at this level gives. It's not that much, really. It is that much. You just don't want to be the reason the room goes quiet. You start eating lunch alone more, not because you're avoiding anyone, not consciously, because the conversations that used to be easy, rent going up, layoffs at somebody's company, the price of eggs, aren't yours anymore. And pretending they still are takes a kind of effort nobody warns you about before you get here. So you say less. Then you say almost nothing. Then you notice you've stopped being invited to say anything at all. The coupe sits in your garage more than it drives. 14 miles one weekend, then nothing for 3 weeks. You notice this and don't examine why. Because examining it would mean admitting the thing you bought to feel something is now just a very expensive object collecting dust under a car cover. The pivot is a declined invitation. Your old roommate gets married and you RSVP no, because the venue is out of state, and part of you, the honest part, the part you don't say out loud, doesn't want to explain the new car in the parking lot to people who are still splitting rent 3 ways, still counting the tip on a dinner bill before they leave it. You send a gift instead, a generous one, generous enough that you hear later they had to ask around who it was from. It doesn't fix the feeling. Gifts rarely do, past a certain level. They just make the distance easier to dress up as generosity. Level 4, $6,400,000. You buy a car you'd never have looked twice at 3 years ago. A limited production model, $310,000. And the sales process is nothing like the dealership lot from level 1. There's no lot. There's a private showroom by appointment only. A man who calls you by your first name because someone briefed him on you before you even walked through the door. A cup of coffee you didn't ask for, waiting on a low glass table. The rule, past a certain number, you stop shopping for cars, and cars start shopping for you. You get invited to buy things you never asked to see. A wait list for a car that hasn't been built yet, allocation available only to existing clients. A number with 6 zeros just to be considered for a list. No guarantee, no refund. You say yes to one of them, mostly to see what happens next. Mostly because saying no to things has stopped meaning anything either way. What happens next is silence. Nobody calls to check on you. Nobody asks if you're okay. The isolation here isn't dramatic. No one cuts you off. No one has a falling out with you. There's no scene. It's quieter than that. People just stop including you in the small things, the barbecues, the group chats about nothing, because they assume, correctly, that your life doesn't have room for the small things anymore. And they're not wrong. You've made sure of that. One declined invitation at a time. You start noticing which relationships were built on convenience. Most of them were. You didn't build many of them any other way either, if you're honest. Which by this level, alone in a very quiet house at 11 at night, you finally are. The pivot is a declined card. Except this time, it's not yours. It's your assistant's, the one you hired to manage the parts of your life you no longer have time for. And the call comes from him, apologetic, asking if you meant to move the funds out of that particular account before the payment tried to clear. You didn't remember moving anything. You have people for that now, 3 of them, and none of them are you. That's the moment it hits you, standing in your kitchen holding a phone you barely recognize the weight of. You've stopped knowing the specifics of your own money. Somewhere between the letter and the private showroom, the numbers became someone else's job to remember. Level 5, $40 million. You can buy any car that exists, any of them. The one of one, the auction record, the car that made headlines for a week when it sold at a price nobody outside the industry could make sense of. You buy 3 in 1 year and can't remember the color of the second one without checking a photo on your phone. The rule. At the top, wanting stops working the way it used to. You get the thing, and the wanting doesn't transfer to the next thing. It just goes quiet. And quiet isn't the same as satisfied, no matter how much it looks the same from the outside. You have a garage now, a real one. Climate-controlled, humidity-monitored, lit like a small museum. And you go stand in it sometimes at night, alone, looking at cars other people would trade a decade of their life for. You don't drive most of them. Some haven't moved in 8 months. You drive the same one you bought at level 3, the coupe, because it still remembers the version of you that wanted something, instead of already having everything. Somewhere in the house, your phone buzzes on the counter. It's your cousin. He wants to know if you're free for dinner. No agenda, just dinner. Like it's years ago, and neither of you has anything yet, back when a full tank of gas felt like a small victory worth mentioning. You say yes before you finish reading the message. You're just 2 people who used to split a 2-bedroom apartment and complain about the same landlord. Neither of you talks about cars once. You still remember the parking lot, the sticker price on the windshield, the finance guy reciting the rate like a specials board, the math you did in your head because some part of you needed to know exactly how bad it was. You didn't know then that the number would eventually stop being the point. You know it now, standing in a garage that cost more than the house you grew up in, holding a phone with your cousin's name on it. The only invitation all week that didn't come with a price of admission attached. If you've ever crossed one of these levels yourself, or you're still standing in that parking lot deciding, drop a comment. I'm curious where you'd stop. There's more like this if you want to keep thinking about it.